This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV and everything that you do to be able to keep me doing this. I'm really, really grateful. I could not do it without you. There's another guy I couldn't do it without, and that is Sam Paredes. Let me get Sam on here. What's happening, my friend, in the state of California currently?
Oh my gosh, where do you want to start? In the legislature, or the breaking news that we started to talk about as of last Friday in the courts? And that's probably a good place to start.
I would agree. Why don't we start there?
Okay. Last Friday, Gun Owners of California submitted an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, on the case of Rhodey versus Becerra. As you all know, as we've talked about on previous shows, that's the case challenging California's ammunition registration laws. We know that Judge Roger Benitez of San Diego issued an injunction on California's ammunition laws, declaring them unconstitutional and basically broken. They cannot work. They hurt law-abiding citizens. So he issued an injunction. The Attorney General then went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and got an emergency stay, which the court issued, which said that they're going to stay the injunction. Therefore, the ammunition laws were back into effect until they had a chance to review the case that was issued by Judge Benitez, or the injunction that was issued by him. We were asked to submit friend of the court briefs. We did so. And we did one, a particular one. CRPA, they're the main litigants in this case. We know that National Rifle Association and other groups have also been participating and funding this case. But we did an amicus brief that specifically, how do we put it nicely, ripped apart and dissected the arguments that the Attorney General used to convince the Ninth Circuit that they should issue a stay. The Attorney General boasted that 750 prohibited persons were prevented from buying ammunition in the first 7 months of the California's ammunition scheme. That's out of several 100,000 purchases of ammunition. They stopped 750. What they didn't say, and we pointed out, is that over 100,000 law-abiding citizens were prevented from being able to exercise their Second Amendment rights and buy ammunition. That Judge Benitez said was completely unconstitutional, and you cannot weigh such a small impact on potential criminals against violating the rights of so many law-abiding citizens, violating the specifically enumerated constitutional rights of California citizens. So we went on to discuss the fact that the databases that are used by the Department of Justice, gosh, they might be maybe 50% accurate. They are so flawed that it's absolutely incredible. First, they're dumb. They cannot tell the difference when somebody their identification is bounced against one of these databases. They cannot tell the difference between an address that says AV period or AVE period or AVENUE. They can't tell the difference that means the same thing. So when they're not exactly the same as they are on the record that they have, they automatically reject the background check for somebody picking up ammunition. The argumentation that the Attorney General used said that since under California's existing background check system, it is apparent that criminals have been able to buy firearms through licensed dealers, that this added step of doing background checks for ammunition purchases was necessary. Now, think about what he just said, and I'll put it in the vernacular. Given that the existing firearms background check system is so woefully inaccurate, filled with holes, 50% maybe at best accurate. We need these added laws in order to be able to prevent criminals. That they're going to get guns because our system sucks, but we're going to prevent them from buying ammunition through licensed dealers with this added step of the background check system that we are putting into place. The fact that the record keeping system the Department of Justice has in place right now is so bad. Back when, what's her name? Kamala Harris was the Attorney General. She was criticized by the Auditor General for not doing a good job, an efficient job of maintaining and updating the databases, that they were sorely lacking. Also, the Attorney General doesn't take into account that many of the court records that have a resolution on cases are destroyed. They're purged. They're not. The courts don't have to keep those records. So, if somebody was arrested for a misdemeanor or potential felony back when they were 17, 18, 19 years old, and the court dropped the case, they were found not guilty, whatever happened, the courts are only required to keep those records for a certain amount of time, and after that, they purge those records. So when the Department of Justice does a background check and they find that, this person has an arrest record, they don't have the ability to say, that case was dropped or they were found innocent or whatever. And in fact, these people are not prohibited. But the Department of Justice does nothing to try to verify the results of that case. They basically say, it's not my job. It's not my job to do that. That's, you hire an attorney and have them do that. You provide all of the court documents in order to try to argue your case. So even that number of 750 prohibited persons that were prevented from buying ammunition, it doesn't hold water. So here you have a situation where you have potentially 0.120% of the transactions that were conducted came up with a person that was not allowed to buy ammunition. And then you have over 100,000 law-abiding citizens who have been prevented from exercising their right. That is so totally backwards. That
in any other world, Sam, in any other world, in any other subject, this would be considered abuse.
No question about
abuse. This is considered abuse. I mean, that's what it is. It's governmental overreach and governmental abuse of law-abiding citizens who have a Second Amendment right. It's not even a Second Amendment right. It's a Second Amendment guaranteed, God-given natural right.
Correct.
To keep and bear arms. That's what it is. Amazing. Yeah. How do you feel that case is going? I mean, what are your impressions of it so far?
The fact that the Ninth Circuit Court is kind of balancing out a little more as time goes on, the chances are that the chances are improved that we will get a positive resolution on this case, and Judge Benita's injunction will stay in place until the actual trial takes place, and we are able to go before the judge and specifically point out how all of these databases are inadequate, they are incorrect, fraught with errors, incomplete, and basically dumb, and how that will take place sometime in the future. But for right now, we have given them all the information they need, and basically went smack down on the Attorney General and his justification for continuing these unconstitutional laws. So we feel pretty good about that. We partnered with Attorney Jason Davis, who did a magnificent job of conducting the research and putting it together in a masterfully worded amicus brief. Joe, like anything else, this costs money. In order to do a brief, you have to hire an attorney. We have to pay him for the time and effort. I mean, they have to eat, they have to support their own families, and this is how they do that, by providing us the service of teaming up with us and being able to do the proper research and vetting all the information and then compiling this brief. It is not a simple thing. So we are in the process now of fundraising, and anybody out there who wants to help us to pay for this brief and the briefs that are to come on this case, we welcome you to come to Gun Owners of California website, gunownersca.com. If you donate, I can pretty well assure you that the resources right now are going into the legal fight and in the election fight right now, which is coming up a little later on this fall. But we have to pay for this, and the costs continue to be incurred in order for us to fight to protect our Second Amendment rights. That's what we do. That's how we do it, and we only exist through the good graces of gun owners who sacrifice some of their resources, financial resources, for us to be able to conduct these types of activities. So just here's an unabashed, unashamed request for assistance from anybody out there. And those of you folks, and I know Joel has just surpassed a milestone of on viewership that is pretty exciting, and many of you are not from California. Yeah. And I just want to remind you that this is an infection that's coming to a state
near you. That's true. It's coming to a locale near you. If you're not careful, you got to fight it right here.
Yeah,
that's
California
right.
affects or infects the rest of the country, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to stomp it out here. If we're successful in the 9th, I'm pretty sure that the Attorney General is so arrogant that even if he's slapped down, he's going to appeal this to the Supreme Court and try to keep the ammunition registration laws in place while that is happening, and that could be a long time. We will fight him every step of the way, and that takes resources. So please help if you're able to.
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Nothing more. Pray for us as we continue this fight. It's ongoing, and we need to stay on top of it.
Well, we'll make sure we've got links in the description for you as well. Sam, you mentioned something about the Ninth Circuit leveling out. What did you mean by that?
Well, President Donald Trump has been very busy appointing judges to district courts and courts of appeals throughout the country, and with the help of Speaker Pro Tem McConnell in the United States Senate, they have been approving judges more so than any president has at this time frame ever before. And he is appointing judges who are constitutionalists, who are supporters of the Second Amendment in particular. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, I believe, is one or two judges away from being balanced between those judges that were appointed by Republicans versus those judges that were appointed by Democrats. Pretty much across the board, those appointed by Democrats tend to be anti-gun, anti-constitution, and although they will argue that point, that they're judges. That's what they do, is they argue. But those that have been appointed by President Donald Trump have been very supportive of the Second Amendment and protection of the Constitution as written. And that is a very important thing. So we're just one or two judges off from having parity here. So when they do the random selection of 3-judge panels to hear some of these cases, chances are that we're going to get some fairness out of it. And when they do en banc panels, which means that the members of the court have said, no, we don't agree with the 3-judge panel. We need an 11-judge panel, including the Chief Justice of the Ninth Circuit, to review this case and probably overturn the rulings of any pro-Second Amendment rulings of a 3-judge panel. But that is getting more equal. And in time, I want it to be so much more equal that we overtake them, and the chances are greatly stacked on our side that if by chance they get a 3-judge panel that is not composed of people who are originalists on the Constitution, that when an en banc panel is assembled, that we have a good chance of overturning those types of rulings. So the tables are turning, and it's only because President Donald Trump has appointed so many judges in the Ninth Circuit, in district courts in California, and throughout the country. There are several appellate courts that have now gone from what we would consider to be anti-gun to being pro-Second Amendment. The balances are turning, and that's a beautiful thing. All the more important reason that we need to make sure that President Donald Trump is reelected this fall so that he can continue that trend of appointing Constitution-believing judges to courts throughout the fruited plain, and that's an important thing.
And I don't want to get into fear mongering here, but I think we have to talk about reality, and then we do need to talk about some other things with regard to California. I know there's some other stuff going on, and then we've had a victory with SB 217 as well. We can touch on, but we have Sleepy Joe Biden, basement Joe Biden. In fact, I'm sitting in the bunker right now because I wanted to see if Joe was hanging around in my bunker, and I didn't know. But I think he's in his own basement instead of mine. I'm sorry. I just couldn't resist it, and so I did it. I apologize. It was a terrible joke, and it was on me. Sorry. But now Biden has amazingly and rather surprisingly, as far as I'm concerned, selected Kamala Harris as his vice presidential running mate. And supposedly because he wanted to pick a woman of color, which he did, but she's largely Indian, from India, is my understanding. Her mother was from India. And she's really not African-American, really. But nevertheless, he picked her anyhow. She has a horrible reputation in the state of California and is universally loathed, I think, by gun owners and a great many other people alike. And so having said that, here's my question. Mm-hmm. What happens to us if Basement Joe, Slow Joe, and Kamala actually win?
Well, one of two things. Number one, the Republicans keep control of the United States Senate, and they can prevent a lot of the bad stuff from getting to a President Joe Biden's desk. And that would be our only stopgap. But in that case, President Joe Biden can issue executive orders that will affect our gun rights. It will affect the importation of firearms from outside the borders. It can affect the manufacturing of firearms in the United States. And what they will do is they will pull out all the stops and issue executive orders on anything and everything and say, sue us. We'll go to court. We will use the bottomless financial pit of the United States Treasury to fund all of the lawsuits that you challenge against us and either bankrupt you guys or win in court. So that's if the Senate is held by the Republicans. If the Senate is lost and President Joe Biden and Kamala, I don't know how she pronounces it, Harris, go to the White House and to the Vice President's observatory on the naval grounds or wherever it is, the Coast Guard property where she's housed, they're going to pull out all the stops. They're going to try to reinstitute the assault weapons ban that was here in the past. They will expand that to include all semi-automatics. They will try to implement an ammunition registration system nationwide. They will eliminate all private party transfers across the nation. They will institute this so-called universal background check, which isn't universal and is no panacea according to any honest investigation of what the background checks do to prevent crime or to reduce crime. It isn't the fox will be loose in the chicken pen. It will be a pack of them will be inside the chicken coop, feasting themselves on all the eggs and all the chickens, and it will be a war like we have never seen before. The attack on the Second Amendment will never have been greater than it will be. if that is the eventuality, and that's what happens. So is it scary? Boy, oh boy, that is truly Armageddon for the Second Amendment, and a very bad scenario for us.
Yeah, well, the other thing to think about, too, is that what you've described is a complete cessation of all forward progress for us. Not only will we have all this defensive work to do, which may or may not be possible to defend against, any forward progress we had in mind or were making comes to screeching halt. I think the other thing we have to remember, too, is we know what Kamala Harris will do with regard to firearms because she was the Attorney General of the state of California. So it's not a question mark. And if she is elected as vice president with Joe Biden as president, who's arguably suffering from the early stages of dementia and not in good health, she literally is Joe Biden's heartbeat away from being president of the United States. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure which would be worse, him or her, but I suspect that she might actually be worse.
She would be worse.
It's just not a good thing altogether. And I wanted to hear that from someone else, so it's not just my screwy opinion, because you've got your thumb on the pulse of this much better than I do.
And we lived through the experience of having her as the Attorney General. Certainly one of the most anti-Second Amendment, anti-constitutional Attorney Generals that ever served in the state of California. You know, they're trying to paint her as this legislative moderate. That is no more true than you know, the moon is made of cheese. She is a radical liberal who came from San Francisco, who opposed the death penalty, for cop killers, who ran the Department of Justice as a clear opponent of gun rights, directed her staff to do everything they can to make it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to acquire guns, to keep guns, and instituted policies that were used by their staff to evaluate gun purchases and CCW purchases where they surpassed the authority that they had legislatively. By giving them directives on what they can deem a good application for a CCW or for a questionable background check. By adding these administrative policies, they added super legislative guidelines on there that they were not authorized to do. There isn't a gun control law that she doesn't like. There are all kinds of stories about, you know, she's going to say she's a gun owner. There's a story that's circulating that said that she actually had one of her friends take a gun into a gun store to sell it because she didn't want to be seen going into a gun store. The gun store thankfully complied by the law and said, nope, if she wants to sell it, she's got to come in person to sell it. And you know, there are all kinds of stories circulating, and we are in the process of validating anything and everything that we can about her. But her record in the United States Senate is 100% absolute, total anti-Second Amendment. Yeah. And that's the truth. And know that they're going to side with the Brady Bunch and all of the other opposers of the Constitution and the Second Amendment and Second Amendment rights. And she will be their champion. Although usually the vice president, their job is to sit in the observatory house and call the president every day and say, how you feeling today, Mr. President? And
basically, yeah.
That's the only real job they have, except that they are the tie-breaking votes in the United States Senate in the event of a voting tie. That's it. That's basically it. So she's going to have one activity that she's going to be engaged in, and that is campaigning to become the next president of the United States if she is the
well. And
president.
The problem with Joe Biden, and I'm not trying to be abusive here to Joe Biden. He's an elderly guy, and I get it. I'm an elderly guy, so I'm not as cold as he is. But I mean, I'm sneaking up on him here. But I've seen this kind of mental decline in a lot of friends and family members and so on. And so you got a guy who's suffering mental decline. He may not even be president while he's president, is my point. And so now you have Kamala Harris, who's a very forceful and obnoxious individual, having perhaps more influence than a normal average vice president might have. And, people complain to me all the time, and I'm sure you hear it too, Sam. They say, well, that stuff in California, people move out of California and they've infected my state. Don't California my Texas. Don't California my Utah. Don't California. Well, she was the AG of California, and I got to tell you, from my standpoint, Becerra's kind of sneaking up on her, but she was the worst, period. You want a California, the entire United States? Vote for Biden and Kamala Harris, and you will have California, the entire United States. And I don't care how rural your state is. I don't care how free you think your state is right now. You can say bye-bye to all of that if he becomes president and she becomes vice president. That's how serious this election is. So if you got, whatever issues you got with Donald Trump, I think I'd vote for him anyhow if I was you and you care about your freedom. Don't worry about the blue thing, Sam. Not a big deal. Don't sweat it. Okay, so let's get off of that. Tell me what's going on with what else is going on with the state of California. There's a lot of bills that are kind of frightening right now. And then there's SB 118, which a lot of people are asking me questions about. Can you enlighten us on exactly what that does now that it's been signed?
Sure. This was a unmitigated, undisguised sneak attack by the Attorney General. SB 118 was ostensibly a budget trailer bill. So it was supposed to have language that would allow for the implementation of budget allocations that were called for when the budget was passed and signed by the governor. That's what budget trailer bills do. They have the implementing language so that the state can go ahead and spend money. But the Attorney General saw this as an opportunity to jam in some legislation. He somehow learned that we have this category of firearms that are not long guns, rifles, and they are not pistols. And so they have coined the term piffles or pifles, Pifles, and these are the short-barreled, shoulder-stockless, or arm support sorts of firearms that have become very popular. And so what SB 118 does is it classifies those as California assault weapons, and it will allow people an opportunity to either register them as assault weapons, or they will have to turn them into the police or destroy them. So here's another government taking issue that will certainly be challenged in court. For all of you folks who have one of those, be aware that they're coming after them. They're going to declare them assault weapons. The budget bill passes with 2/3 votes, and it becomes effective immediately. It doesn't wait till the end of the year, and it all depends on any implementation dates that might be in the statute. So it is a bad thing, and they're just expanding. And every time they open up the California assault weapons laws, it gets worse. We're not sure all of the impacts that'll happen by opening this thing up. But don't think that because you have what California declares an assault weapon, that during this window you're going to be able to sneak in a so-called California assault weapon that you did not register during its grace period for registration. This is only for those types of firearms, and it's a bad thing. So it was this was a bill that didn't get vetted in a policy committee. There was no real ability to testify against it. We had to testify against it in a budget review committee and in an appropriations committee, and then it went to the floor, and then it was a bill that had made it through the process and was a completely different content. They gutted it, amended it, turned it into the budget trailer bill. They added this language in it. There was a whole bunch of other language that the Assembly objected to with regards to the treatment of prisoners in prisons, and they got that worked out, but they had no problem with the gun control language that was in there. So that is what was very quickly in one day passed out of one house, went to the other house for approval, and then was sent to the governor's desk, and he signed it immediately.
What else are we looking at other than that?
Well, we're looking at a variety of other things. We're still looking at AB 2362 by Mertsucci, which affects dealers. It will allow the Department of Justice to fine dealers um, up to $1,000, up to $3,000 per violation of any rule or regulation when they're inspected. Anything that they do is wrong, they are able to fine them. Right now, the law says that if a dealer regularly and maliciously disobeys any of the laws and regulations of the firearms codes in California, the Department of Justice can jerk their California dealer's license and they can't operate in the state. Well, with this bill, they've turned this into a fundraising bill. And I envision the day when the Attorney General is going to go to his inspectors and say, for every dealer that you inspect, I know you can find a T that wasn't crossed or an I that wasn't dotted, and you will be required to file a fine for the violation of those rules, and that money will come to the Department of Justice for them to do whatever they want to do. Another bill that is still has life in it, AB 2847, by Assemblyman Chu. This is the microstamping bill. This is the bill that changes the existing law with regards to the California roster of approved handguns. Right now, one of the reasons we do not see any new guns added to that list is because any new model has to have microstamping technology. Thank you, Kamala Harris, who required this to happen, even though the technology did not exist. She was the one that made this requirement and added it to the the whole list of things that people have to jump through, the hoops they have to jump through in order to put a new gun on the safe handgun list. So it has to have a loaded chamber indicator, a magazine disconnect, and microstamping technology that imprints the microstamping characters two locations on an ejected case. Now, the National Shooting Sports Foundation filed a lawsuit saying that it is a physical impossibility for that to happen, because the only portion of a firearm that is impacting the case with sufficient force to imprint something is the firing pin, and that's one location. There is no other location. You can't do it on the inside of the chamber. There's no technology to be able to allow you to engrave these characters on the inside of a chamber and then the pressure enough to impart those numbers on the case. So it was a physical impossibility. This was an opportunity for the state to say, we actually don't want any new handgun models added to the list of roster of approved guns in California. So they, in effect, banned all new models. And those of you know that we are dealing with obsolete models. Thankfully, the manufacturers continue to pay the fees and submit models for testing that are on the list in order for them to be able to sell guns in the state of California. But how many Gen 3 Glock 17s can you have, and we cannot get the new generations of anything. So Assemblyman Chu said, okay, we've heard you. We're going to change the law that says that a manufacturer has to submit a firearm for testing that will impart the characters in only one location. The firing pin would impart the characters on the case in one location. And we would approve the gun for addition to the roster if it had the loaded chamber indicator and the magazine disconnect, and it shot 600 rounds without failure, and it passed the drop test and all of the hoops they have to jump through. We would add it to the list. But for every new model with microstamping technology that is added to the list, we're going to go back to the beginning of the list and take the first 3 models of guns that don't have microstamping technology and remove them from the list. So one gun goes on, one model goes on, 3 guns go off. There is a point of diminishing returns where, the list is going to go from between 750 and 800 models that are on the list right now to, 100 maybe. But the fact of the matter is, Joel, you and I know that no manufacturer in the world uses microstamping technology. No. It is obsolete. It is incomplete. It doesn't work consistently. It's been proven in test. And as a matter of fact, Ted Lizotte, who was the guy who patented it, has dropped the patent, has let it go into the public domain, which is why Kamala Harris jammed it into the law in California, and isn't even dealing with this kind of technology anymore because no one's going to use it.
And if you don't think she'll try, if she becomes vice president and they have the Senate and the House, if you don't think she'll ram a similar similar law through the federal system,
Absolutely.
You're dreaming. You're smoking crack, okay, because she will do it. This is a crazy thing. I mean, by the way, if you want an idea of how fast the guns would disappear from the roster, President Trump instituted a federal rule, that for every new federal regulation that was instituted, 2 had to be removed. His goal was to try to shrink the size of the federal government. He has eliminated tens of thousands of federal regulations as a result. That's how fast new regulations show up. And, it's interesting. He did a press conference, I don't know, several months ago. He was talking about that actually 3 to 4 have been removed for every one that was instituted, and that has shrunk the size of the federal government. It's so much easier for businesses and for people to do things, and farmers and so on. This is the reverse. This is for every gun that you don't want to buy that has microstamping and some weird technology on it that is added to the list. The obsolete guns that you would at least like to buy, 3 of them are going to be removed. If it was so successful by adding 1 regulation and removing 2, by shrinking the federal government, imagine what it's going to do to the roster of handguns you can actually buy in the state of California. You'll end up, I suspect, at some point or other, with less than 100 guns. I think you'll end up with probably, arguably, 50 or less, if indeed any manufacturer actually wants to do this. And I'm not so sure they're going to find too many. So that's one saving grace of it. One of the things that happened, Sam, and I know you got more to talk about, but I don't want to address this because I get this question in email. I get about 150 emails a day at this point, which is it's a little bit like blowing your hair back, but I try to respond to all of them. Sometimes it takes me several days. And some of those are business related, but I do get a lot of them from viewers. One of the common questions I get is really it's a 3-word question. Isn't anyone suing? Or why isn't anybody suing for these? Would you address that, please?
Absolutely. We've got lawsuits on every one of these issues that are in place right now here in the state of California. There's a lawsuit by the National Shooting Sports Foundation on microstamping. It made it to the California Supreme Court, and when the district court basically poo-pooed it and didn't even want to go into the technicalities of the lawsuit, it was appealed to the California appellate courts. They agreed with the district court. It went to the Supreme Court of the state of California, and they said, well, you know what? In reality, you guys have to go ahead and hear the details of this argument that is being made on this issue, because they are saying that the law requires something that is an impossible goal to achieve. So they send it back to the lower courts for an actual trial and a discussion of the details of the facts. And so that is still in play. We've got, everything you can think of is still being sued. The assault weapons ban, there's still lawsuits in play. The ammunition registration is the hottest one. Rhodey v. Becerra is still in play. We are piggybacking on lawsuits that would affect our concealed carry laws in the state of California, and some of those lawsuits aren't even in the state of California, but will absolutely affect what happens here in California. So all of these issues, lawsuits have been filed. The resources have been expended to file those lawsuits now.
And they continually are, by the way.
Yes.
I want to just make it easy for Sam right here. Sam, can you tell me one of these issues that there isn't a lawsuit on yet?
No, there are no issues that are not being sued so far.
That's it. There it is right there. People ask me the question all the time. Why isn't somebody suing?
We have.
Somebody is.
In the legislative process, when they sponsor a bill, there's a 2-year session. And in many bills have the life of 1 year, but some of them have a 2-year life. They have to be dealt with within that 2-year session period. So we see a beginning and an end. In the legal system, you file a lawsuit, and a resolution could take years to be finalized, or to come with some sort of a ruling. And you have to play that long game. You have to have the attorneys on top of those cases and responding to the requests of the courts for information and for amicus briefs and for motions that have to be filed. And the compilation data and information that gun owners of California has been very much involved in collecting horror cases by people who are trying to buy ammunition or buy guns, and they run into the buzzsaw that the Attorney General sets up as a barrier for people to exercise their rights. We've been collecting that information and giving it to the attorneys so that they can give that exact information to the judge so that they can see what is really happening in real life situations. This isn't a description. This isn't, a generalization. We are giving them specific instances of the horrors that are going on, and that's an ongoing thing that is constantly going on. And then we have to wait for the judges to be able to have the time to do all of the research and all of the background and to schedule the trials and to hold the trials. And then our opponents on a regular basis file motions in order to drag things on and to hold up any trials or hearings or rulings. And so we have to exhaust that system, and that's why we have to be in play in the legislative process. That's why we need the resources, the financial resources. People don't realize that each one of these lawsuits costs between $500,000 and between $3 and $5 million to file. And thankfully, we have our partners in the Second Amendment fight in the Gun Owners Foundation, the National Rifle Association, Second Amendment Foundation, and other organizations that are willing to put together those financial resources to file these cases in California and throughout the country. And then we come in to spend the tens of thousands of dollars that are required to support those cases with friend of the court briefs. And they are extremely important. People say, why do you have to support a case that's been filed? Because when they file cases, they are restricted in the number of words and the presentations that they give, and amicus briefs give us the opportunity to expand on details and add information or add the voices of law enforcement or state associations that support the Second Amendment and add their voices to these cases so that the judges hear not only from the people who filed the lawsuit and the defendants, but they also hear from other voices that are directly affected by these laws. And so they're incredibly important. This is the game of any part of the process that we're involved in, whether it's elections or legislative lobbying activities or the courts. The courts right now are singularly the most important thing that we are doing, and we have to stay engaged in that one. We have to stay on top of it. We have to be ready to respond when we're required to, in order to promote and protect the Second Amendment through our legal system. That is where we are. That is where we stand. There's no way around it. There is no road forward without going down that path.
And it takes time and it takes money, and we're fighting the government, which is using our own tax money against us. How much value is there, Sam, to when you file an amicus brief, mm-hmm. as an organization, you're representing your members and gun owners in general. Mm-hmm. How much value is it in the court's eyes if your membership is large or small? Does it carry more weight if you represent a lot more people, or does that matter?
The answer is yes. It certainly does matter when you represent a lot of people, which is why it's important for organizations like Gun Owners of America, National Rifle Association, Gun Owners of California, CRP to continue to grow, to have numbers that we represent, and we show that to the courts, that it is not just our voices, but whether it's one voice, 10,000 voices, or 5 million voices, the arguments that are made have to be very good, airtight. They have to be well thought out and well written, and they have to convey the message. And we have to take into account previous cases that have been filed. Then we have to have attorneys that have the ability to go back and say, well, Your Honor, you guys ruled in this case in this direction, and that ruling justifies our arguments in this case. And you have to be able to cross-reference all manner of rulings and laws that are on the books in order to justify your cases. And oftentimes, we are venturing into new territory. Since Heller versus D.C. and McDonald versus Chicago, that's the first time that the Supreme Court acknowledged that the Second Amendment is an individual right, and we have the right to have firearms in our homes, readily accessible for us to be able to use to defend ourselves. And that right is so important that not only can the federal government not infringe on that right, but neither can state and local governments infringe on those rights. So important, extremely, extremely important.
Well, which brings up the subject, and then I want to get back to the cases that you haven't mentioned yet, because I know there's a few, and there's going to be people asking about them. Mm-hmm. But it's important to join these organizations and support them. It's important when Gun Owners of California submits an amicus brief that they can indicate that Gun Owners of California is an organization that represents this many people. Mm-hmm. And so the more members they have, the stronger their argument is going to be, or maybe the argument's the same, but the more weight it's going to carry when it arrives at the court. So if you're not a member of these organizations, I encourage you to join. I'm going to put the link in the description for Gun Owners of California. Please go join. And if you can afford it, please contribute, because, as Sam said, these things are incredibly expensive. And essentially, as gun owners, we're fighting against our own money, because the state is, in California, doesn't matter California or any other state, or if you're fighting the government, you're fighting against your own tax dollars. And they have an unlimited amount of money to use against you. And we don't necessarily have an unlimited amount to fight them. We're also facing billionaires like Bloomberg and Soros and so on. They contribute to these kind of things. And, I'm sure we have our own millionaires on our side who contribute, and people like that. But nevertheless, if it wasn't for you and I contributing, these folks would really be struggling to try to get this stuff done. Sam, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let me just add this last thing. People might ask, how important are these friend of the court briefs, these amicus curiae? Well, when a Supreme Court justice in their decisions or dissents quote the amicus brief that you have submitted, you know that they have an impact. And we have a record of being quoted twice by Supreme Court justices in rulings on the Second Amendment. And that shows that they read these things. They have an impact on how they make their rulings and how they make their arguments. They are incredibly important, and people need to understand that. So that's that on the.
It's interesting that Justice Thomas for years never asked a question. He would sit through oral argument and never ask a question. He was asked about that once. I remember watching the interview or reading the interview somewhere. I don't remember. It's been so long ago. But he said, no, he relies upon the briefs. So he would look at the case, and then he would look at the amicus briefs, and that's what he relied upon. And then he'd listen to the oral argument, but he didn't ask any questions. So, there's a lot of weight given to those things.
Guess who quoted us?
Justice Thomas, right? Exactly. Okay. So, this is what they do. They do read them. Their staff reads them. Because the oral arguments are only so long, and there's only so much information there. And
45 minutes. Yeah. 45 minutes before the Supreme Court on an issue that affects the entire country on an important enumerated constitutional right.
Right.
45 minutes, and that's both sides, including all of the questions that are launched at them by the judges to the attorneys, interrupting the cases that they're trying to make.
And some of those questions aren't even related. They're related to some other tangent that the justice has gone off on for whatever reason. I've watched these arguments and thought, my gosh, if you're not really, hence the reason Paul Clement does this all the time, is if you're not really, really sharp, it's really tough to do this kind of stuff. Well, so what else is going on in California? We've been on a while, but I want to at least get to the rest of these cases. I'm going to stop asking you questions and let you go through them if you wouldn't mind.
The questions are good. The only dumb question is a question that isn't asked. So that's the way I look at it. We have two more bills that we are concerned with. SB 914 by Senator Portantino, the jolliest of anti-gunners in the state Senate. This is a bill that defines what a legal hunting permit is in the state of California, and will guide as to when anyone from the age of 18 to under 21 years of age can purchase a long gun with as long as they have a valid hunting license. And the reason they did this is because of the shooting down in San Diego, where a younger man under age 21 purchased a firearm after getting his hunting license, and then one shot up innocent people at a synagogue. And the fact of the matter is, they found out that yes, he had a valid hunting license, but they said, well, actually, even though he purchased it and it was valid, the hunting year didn't begin until July 1st, and he bought it in June. Therefore, the license wasn't actually valid, although it was. So they're saying that now young people cannot buy a firearm unless that hunting license is valid within that year. Fact of the matter is, the shooter could have waited 2 more weeks and after July 1st and purchased the firearm and still committed the crime that he wanted to commit, that he was hell-bent on committing. And this is a bill in search of a problem that doesn't exist. So it really is kind of silly. But the bad thing about it is, this bill also will impact our ability to loan guns to people, especially youth shooters. This thing could negatively impact all Boy Scout camps with rifle ranges, all shooting teams throughout the state of California, the sporting clays and trap and skeet teams out there that where kids don't have the ability to buy guns, so they're shooting loan guns. It's going to set all kinds of regulations that's going to make it very difficult for teams and people to lend guns to youngsters to learn to shoot, to earn merit badges, and to compete in scholastic competitions throughout the state of California. At very least, it sets up the process for the first step toward banning the lending of guns.
Right.
And that's why this is important. And then the final bill that we're really watching is SB 1175 by Senator Stern. This is the African iconic animal trophy.
Yeah. Okay.
And we talked about it last time we did. Yeah. And we don't have to go through it anymore, except to say that this is a major first step toward banning trophy hunting of all kinds here in the state of California. First, they're starting with the iconic animals from Africa. They will make it illegal for Californians to go to Africa and safari and then bring back the trophies to California. That will be illegal. But most importantly, it makes it illegal for people who already possess these trophies from previous African safaris. Those trophies will become illegal. They will have to be turned in, destroyed, or taken out of the state of California. And we know that based on the arguments that were made by the proponents of this bill, their goal is ultimately to ban all trophies with wild game in the state of California. It's their first big step. They want to crush hunting in the state of California, and they view this as a good opportunity to do that. And even though it was pointed out that the elimination of this economy, or this portion of the economy that Californians contribute to African countries for the betterment of and the sustainability of villages that have no other economy except around the hunting industry, that people will potentially starve. The proponents of this bill, in essence, I'm boiling it down in my language, said, it's okay. They can die. Because somebody else will have to kill these animals in order to keep them going. And we had the elected or the appointed officials who were in charge of game management in African countries who testified as to how devastating this would be to economies throughout Africa if this bill were passed. The proponents of this law just kind of said, thank you very much, but we know better what we're talking about than you do. And so
once again, it's a bill. It's not looking for a problem to solve. It's looking for a problem to create.
That's correct.
There's no problem it's solving. It's creating problems. This is one of those wacky bills. Are there any others, or is that the last of the package?
Those are the main ones that we are that we're looking at. And, you know, during these last few days, we're watching them like a hawk because funnier things have happened. Magically, different issues are amended into bills on the floor at the last minute without committee hearings. And they, as long as they're in charge and have majorities and super majorities, they can do anything they want. So we're watching them like a hawk. They've got till the end of August, and then they're gone, according to the Constitution. The legislative session ends on August 31st, and then the governor has 1 month to sign bills or veto them, and then anything that he doesn't sign that was sent to his desk becomes law without his signature. So we're at the end of the 2-year session, and we're watching it like a hawk.
Now, my understanding is, thank you, Senator Brian Jones, that they can no longer vote by phoning it in or sending in a proxy vote or whatever. Is that the case?
Well, Senator Jones provided us with an opinion that was issued by the legislature's own attorneys, legislative counsel, who ruled or found, opined that they believe that that votes have to be taken in person in the legislature in order for them to count, because you cannot call a quorum with somebody who's on TV or on the telephone, or you cannot call a quorum when somebody walks in with a written proxy of another member. And in fact, proxies eliminate the democratic process, because now you don't have representatives that are voting. You have somebody else, another representative, who is voting on behalf of another representative. Regardless of how their constituents feel, they will be casting votes on their behalf, and these people do not represent these people. So there are all kinds of constitutional issues, and we believe that the legislature is finding itself between a rock and a hard place. Any bill that is moved through the process or passes with proxy votes or non-present voting will be challenged in court, and again, we'll be back in the courts to overturn those laws and make them null and void.
And please do support Gun Owners of California. I will put, as I said, I'll put a link in the description, because we got to keep Sam and his team hard at work at doing this. And if you haven't already joined, I urge you to do so. Yeah, it doesn't cost a lot of money. What's your annual membership, Sam? I don't know. I pay for it every year, but I don't know anymore.
$35 is for an annual membership, and every time somebody joins, when we have critical issues going on, we might ask you for another additional donation on that, but $35 makes you a member, and it ensures that you will receive our quarterly newsletters, any emails or updates on what's going on, so that you can take action. That's all it takes. And if yes, we are truly sacrificing in order to protect and defend our Second Amendment rights, because, as Joe pointed out aptly, we are fighting our own money. And we are the ones who have to sacrifice by dipping into our pockets again in order to protect ourselves and fight for what we believe in, and fight to protect the Constitution of the United States. So, there are no more generous people in the world than those people who support the Second Amendment, because we know that it comes from where it hurts. It comes from their disposable income. It comes with the full knowledge that they are fighting money that they've been forced to send to the government. And the government is using that money to strip them of their rights. So we are humble and appreciative of all the resources we receive. Nothing goes to waste. Everything is spent on actual lobbying activities. We don't give contributions away to people to buy votes or to butter them up. We pay for materials and communications with them that put their feet to the fire. We educate voters throughout the state of California as to who the good guys and good gals are, and who they should vote for, and who the bad guys are, and who they should oppose. And then, most importantly, we spend a lot of resources in fighting the legal battle, and keeping our very small offices open in order to continue those battles. Our staff, small though it may be, does a whole lot of work. And we do it with pleasure and honor, and we've dedicated our lives to this fight. And so, unlike many people who have left the state of California, said enough is enough, we've chosen to stay here and hold the line and fight until the bitter end. So over my take my guns from my cold dead fingers. I mean that literally.
Brother, thank you so much for all that you do. And I'm right here with you. I'm not leaving California either. Neither one of us have to stay. We could both sell and move and probably be better off financially, but we're staying. We're fighting, and we got to fight the battle where it is. Now, I don't think we talked about SB 217. Mm-hmm. And I want to leave on a positive note, because I do want you to know, if you're watching this, that, yeah, we face a lot, but we do win periodically. We've had we're working for a win where the magazine stuff is concerned. We had Freedom Week, and that's still in court. And we're working to overturn the ammo stuff. Judge Benitez did a miracle work of art type decisions in both of those instances. We're still working on those in court. Those they take a long time, but they're in there, and there's potential victories with both of those. And very recently we had a victory with 217 because we managed to kill it, and it was of great concern. Can you give us an idea of what that bill was and what it would have done? And unfortunately, it's dead.
This was a bill that was going to take youth camps of all types and create an entire bureaucracy that would allow those youth camps to exist. They would regulate them, they would inspect them, they would give them rules, regulations, and guidelines on how they can manage those camps, the types of activities that would be allowed, and how those activities could be conducted. This was the government taking over youth camps in California completely. And you want to ruin youth camps? You want to ruin nonprofit organizations that run camps for kids of all types, whether it's Boy Scouts, whether it's homeless kids, whether it's handicapped kids. It didn't matter. They were all going to be regulated with a bureaucracy and a set of guidelines and rules that was going to govern all of their activities. And thankfully, that bill was crushed. And
it included things like Vacation Bible School, your church teen camp or preteen camp or whatever you want to call it, sixth grade camp. I mean, any kind of Boy Scouts camp or Girl Scouts camp, any of those, all of those were all would all have been regulated, essentially, in many cases, regulated and feed, in the sense of cost, completely out of existence. And it would have been a tragedy. And fortunately, that thing is dead, and it's dead because of the hard work of organizations like Gun Owners of California and CRPA. And so I urge you to support them. In fact, if you can join both, please do. But they do need your money. I hate to always ask you for money all the time, but I'm going to do it. These folks need your money because they got to be able to get this job done, and they work hard. I've known Sam for a long time. Fortunately, he still talks to me. I'm grateful for that. But he and Lori do a great job, and they work their fannies off. And like you said, they try to stay lean and mean about it. But I mean, they really do some great work. And they work hand in glove, if you will, with CRPA, which does some great work. And so they are organizations worth your support and worthy of your support. Please do support them. Sam, thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate it. I'm grateful that you took the time. We've been on for a long time, and I'm grateful you took the time out of your busy day to do it. Thank you.
Joel, it's always an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about our amicus brief and these bills that are before the legislature. Very important stuff. The election is coming up. Very important election. Everything hangs on the balance on what happens during that election. There's more information to come. More things will come up that will affect our Second Amendment rights, and I look forward to coming on board with you to talk about this and to share that information with a growing number of viewers that you are having.
I'm very grateful. Thank you very much, brother. Have a wonderful week, okay? And you take care. We will do it again whenever you want to. Just let me know if we have something to talk about, or we'll have coffee or whatever. It doesn't matter, one way or the other.
Roger that.
All right, talk to you later. Well, thank you very much for watching. I'm very, very grateful that you do. I know this has been a long video. These interview videos can be quite long, and I appreciate the fact that you take the time out of your busy schedule to actually watch them and learn about what's going on in California, because as Sam says, and I quote him a lot on this, it either affects or infects the rest of the country. So thank you very much for all of your support of Gun Guy TV, for the fact that you watch these videos. And if you've hung out with us for an hour and what is it, almost an hour and 15 minutes, I think, you are truly a Second Amendment supporter. I'm giving you a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thumbs up and everything else. Have a wonderful week, and wherever you go, whatever you do, please be safe.